When your reptile gets too cold, it's not just about them feeling a little chilly. It's a full-blown biological crisis. Their entire internal universe just starts to shut down. So today, we're going to break down exactly what's happening during this cold-blooded crisis and how you can become the one thing that stands between them and the void, how you can become their sun. Okay, so let's start big. I mean, really big. The universe is a freezing, empty, indifferent void. Here on our tiny little rock, life figured out a few ways to fight back against that cold. But here's the thing, not all life uses the same strategy. And that right there brings us to the cosmic problem, the fundamental difference between us and them. It's a story of an internal heater versus an external sun. So on one side, you've got us mammals. We're basically walking around with our own internal space heaters. We're endotherms, right? We're always generating our own heat. But then, you've got them. Reptiles are ectotherms. Their entire biology runs on external thermal power. They are completely, 100% at the mercy of their environment. That nearest warm rock, or in our case, that heat lamp we provide. That's what powers their entire existence. So the big question is, what happens when that external sun, their power source, just goes away? Well, it's not just a minor inconvenience, it's an absolute catastrophic shutdown. The entire cellular factory inside them just freezes. Right, so that's the official term for it, ectotherm. And what that really means is that every single biological process they have, we're talking everything from digesting their last cricket to fighting off a simple infection, it's all powered entirely by external heat. No heat, no power. It's a simple and pretty brutal reality. And this biological collapse? It's terrifying. It happens in stages. First, as soon as the temperature plummets, their digestion just halts. Any food sitting in their stomach starts to rot, literally turning into a toxic time bomb. Then their immune system pretty much goes into a coma, leaving them completely defenseless against any microscopic invaders. And if that cold hangs around, the final stages are things like cardiac arrhythmia and total organ failure. It's a complete system shutdown. Okay, this is super important. We have to distinguish this from something called brumation. Cold stress is a totally involuntary, rapid collapse. Brumation, on the other hand, is a voluntary, gradual slowdown. It's a natural biological rhythm. The key difference you need to remember is this. An animal in brumation can still choose to move to get a drink of water. An animal suffering from cold stress, it can't. One is natural, the other is a life-threatening medical emergency. So this all leads to probably the most important question for any reptile keeper out there. So, how cold is too cold? Well, the answer is incredibly specific to the species. Just take a look at this. For a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko, you're hitting the danger zone once it drops below 65 degrees Fahrenheit. But for a ball python, that danger starts way higher, at 70 degrees. And you gotta understand, these aren't just suggestions. These are hard biological limits, basically hardwired right into their DNA. And why the difference? It almost always comes down to where they're from. Let's compare two really popular snakes to see what I mean. You've got the ball python, which comes from tropical Africa, and it is super sensitive to the cold. But then you have the corn snake from the temperate parts of the United States, and it's way more cold tolerant. Knowing this is absolutely vital, especially if your power goes out. You've got to act a whole lot faster to save that ball python. Okay, so let's say the absolute worst happens. Your thermostat fails, the power goes out in a storm, whatever. You find your reptile, and it's cold and unresponsive. Listen, the next 30 minutes are absolutely critical. Here's exactly what you need to do. Okay, step 1, forget about the equipment for a second. Get the animal out of that cold enclosure and move it to the warmest room in your house. The animal is the priority, period. Step 2 is to begin gradual warming. Seriously, your own body heat is perfect for this. Or you can use a warm water bottle. We're talking about 95 to 100 degrees, but make sure it's wrapped in a towel. And I cannot stress this enough. The key word here is gradual. So why so much emphasis on gradual? Because this right here might be the most critical number in this whole explainer. You are aiming to raise their body temperature by only 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit every 15 minutes. If you warm them up any faster than that, you risk sending them into cardiac shock, which can be just as fatal as the cold was in the first place. And that brings us to the big list of things you must absolutely not do. Don't use hot tap water directly on them. Don't just stick them under a full-blast heat lamp. And please never, ever use a heat pad directly on their skin. Here's something you might not know. Reptiles don't really sense heat pain the way we do. You could be causing severe burns and not even realize it. All of these methods warm them up way too fast, and they can be just as deadly. So when do you need to call a vet? Here's your checklist. If the animal has been cold for more than, say, 4 to 6 hours, call a vet. If it's showing any respiratory wheezing, call a vet. If it's still unresponsive after an hour of you doing this slow, careful warming, definitely call a vet. And for snakes, if it has regurgitated or if any reptile is inverted or has no muscle control, you need to get them to a vet immediately. These are all signs that the damage is pretty severe and you need a professional. Look, emergency response is one thing, but prevention is literally everything. So how do we avoid this nightmare scenario altogether? How do you become their personal sun god? Well, you do it by engineering the perfect, fail-safe sanctuary. All right, let's talk about your prevention toolkit. These are the essentials. First, a proportional thermostat. This is what gives you that stable, precise temperature and avoids those dangerous hot or cold swings. Next, a backup heat element, like a ceramic heat emitter. This gives you redundancy, so if your main bowl blows, you're covered. And finally, a simple low-temperature alarm for the room, not just the enclosure. Trust me, that's your first and best line of defense. And that last point is so important, and it gets overlooked all the time. You can have the most expensive, high-tech setup in the world inside that enclosure, but if the room itself drops to 55 degrees, no heater is going to be able to keep up. The ambient temperature of the room, that is the foundation of your reptile's entire world. So let's just zoom back out for a second. When you get all of this right, when you engineer that stable, warm, life-sustaining environment, you're doing so much more than just keeping a pet. Think about it. In your little corner of this endlessly cold and completely indifferent cosmos, you have this almost godlike power to create a perfect sanctuary for a tiny creature. Keeping them warm doesn't just keep their biological factories running, it is a small, beautiful rebellion against the freezing void of space. So if you want to become that personal sun god for your reptile, you can dive even deeper into the full guide and get the right toolkit. To do that, just head on over to the link on your screen, krawlo.com/blog/reptile-cold-stress-guide. They've got the exact guides and tools we've been talking about. And don't worry, the link is also down in the description. Thanks for joining us for this one. And hey, if you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for more science.